Welcome back to Dr. Supercoach YouTube. You're on with Pig for another week of captain recommendations. This is round 20. This is the last round before Supercoach finals for most leagues. And we got 5 weeks left, so 5 more weeks to pick some nice captains, 5 more weeks for maybe a little ranking climb. So last week was a crazy week for some of our captains. Some of my recommendations went really well. You know, Caldwell before the injury, Marshall, English, Sinclair as my pod VC, and Sarong. But some of the others I recommended went poor, and I'm looking at you, Zach Butters, Dan Houston, Toby Nankervis. So if you, the coach, got yourself a 120 plus captain score, you actually probably did better than most. A lot of people copped a score that wasn't 120. So well done if you did that. This week we have a lot of good players with favourable matchups. So fingers crossed we can get everyone back to some 130 plus VC scores. And here are some of my favourite options. My number 3 vice captain is Dane Zorko. Dane was awesome last week against the Swans. Scored 129 when none of the other Supercoach relevant players in that game fired a shot. A lot of people with captaincies in that game that just flopped. So Dane, well done. And we know that he loves a Q clash. Remember the fire in the old Zorko versus Took battles? Playing against Gold Coast gives us another nice Zorko VC attempt, as the Suns are the 4th easiest matchup for attacking defenders and the 2nd easiest matchup for general defenders over the last 5 games. Little quirk here, they have been quite restrictive to the designated kickers, so like the kicking guys, but I'm going to back Zorko's ability to get up the ground and rack up disposals. Much like guys like Perryman scored a 131, Bergman a 92, Iden a 120, Buckley 111, Aaliyah 106, Chapman 94. They've all done well in recent weeks. None of those guys are even at Zorko's level, because he's the type of player that can rack up 25 touches and 10 marks quite easily, which is always a really nice Supercoach base. And when fronted with an easy matchup, a VC spike score is always a possibility for Zorko. My number 2 VC option, I'm going to be a little bit cheeky here and give you a double option, Nick Martin and or Jordan Ridley, because a lot of people will have one or the other. Some people have both, but here we go. The Bomber boys are back this week. After top scoring for Essendon 2 weeks ago, with scores of 142 and 127 respectively, Martin and Ridley dropped off a little with the hard matchup in round 19. Even still, they still went over 90 each. Ridley over 100. So this week they take on the Saints, who are the 2nd easiest matchup for attacking defenders and the easiest matchup for defenders in general. Remember when Nick Martin played the Saints in round 3? He equaled the Essendon record for 44 disposals in a game, and he was just allowed to run free. And Jordan Ridley's shown a 160 plus ceiling this year. So I fully expect one of these guys to go huge here against the Saints. And to be honest, they both could. Some recent scores from wingers and defenders against St Kilda. Jaden Hunt just had a 138. Lockie Scholl had a 118. Billy Dowling had a 101. Brady Hoff had a 104. Even Tom Barras, 102. Tom McCartan, 103. Aaliyah, 123. Brandon Zerk-Thatcher, 101. So just all defenders in general are crushing the Saints in terms of Supercoach scoring. And no defence to any of those players, but if those guys are turning up against St Kilda, what are Martin and Ridley going to do to them? This is a really nice time slot here for a VC punt, which means you can go for the high upside swing with one of these guys, and you can back it up with the safer caption on, the Saturday night or the Sunday. If you own both and you want me to pick one, I would say pick Jordan Ridley. I think he's got the more consistent higher upside, but both I think could score really well here. Then my number 1 VC, this is a really nice one that if you got this guy, I think it's an awesome option. Tristan Cherry. Tristan has been my number 1. No, he hasn't. Tristan has been one of the most consistent picks this year. If you started with him or traded him in, you've done very, very well. This week, Cherry matches up with Geelong and Sam De Koning, who's the 3rd easiest ruck matchup over the last 5 games. SDK has given up scores of 114 to Lloyd Meek, 131 to Darcy Cameron, and 139 to Tim English over the last 3 games. I was very confident in the English VC last week, and I'm just as hot on Cherry this week. So De Koning allowed English to have 41 hitouts, and now I haven't fact-checked this, but according to Xavier Ellis and Selby, this is the first time that English has won a hit-out battle in the last 19 games that he's played. So if that's true, which I believe those guys, that's just insane. English never wins a hit-out, but he won it against Sam De Koning. Now, flip it over to Tristan Cherry. He's one of the best hit-out ruckmen in the league. So if SDK let Cameron have 58 hit-outs and he let English have 41, Tristan Cherry could have 300 hit-outs. I mean, that might be a slight exaggeration, but let me tell you this. Sam De Koning wins the hit-out in only 28% of his ruck contests. That is the 3rd worst rate in the entire league for players that have attended 300 ruck contests. And the 2 players that are worse than him, Joe Danaher and Jake Riccardi, they're not ruckmen. So AKA, Sam De Koning is the easiest ruckman in the league to win a hit-out against by quite a few percentage points. And in games this year, when Tristan Cherry has had 40 or more hit-outs, which I fully expect him to do in this game, he averages 125 points. I think that's actually his floor in this game, and the ceiling could be even bigger. I will be on the Tristan Cherry captaincy in my draft leagues. I think it's an incredible option this week. Then we go to my pod vice captain. Actually captain because he plays on the Sunday. So this is a real pod. Jack Sinclair got the pod VC back on track last week with the delicious 140. This week, I'm turning to a new face in the captain video. Someone in only 2% of teams. A real pod, as I said. But he might be someone you own in a draft league, or he might be someone you could trade in for the injured Nank or TDK. That is Darcy Cameron. Coming off scores of 131 and 132 against easy ruck opponents, DCAM now gets a matchup with Richmond, who over the last 5 games are actually the easiest ruck matchup. And they might be even easier than the data suggests. Nankervis is out this week with a concussion. Sam Naismith is out for the season. So who are Richmond going to use to ruck? Probably going to be a combination of Samson Ryan and Jacob Kazitsky. Samson only wins a hit-out in 38% of his ruck contests, which is a pretty low number. Remember those 58 hit-outs that Cameron had a fortnight ago? He could go close to that again against this combo. Briggs had a 94. No, Sweet had a 94, Briggs had a 122, and Jackson had a 121, all against Richmond over the last 3 weeks, and that was with Nank holding down the fort. Samson Ryan is no Nank. I was debating whether I even recommend someone that won't really be highly owned by serious classic players, but this is just too good of a pod captaincy to pass up recommending. I think Darcy Cameron is going to destroy Richmond here, so consider it for your draft leagues or your trade plans. But I know there are some coaches who really want to follow the pod VC and want someone with a bit more than 2% owned. So I'll give you a second pod VC option. And for those kind of following along, tracking my pod, how they're going, Darcy Cameron's going to be the one I count. He's my guy. But I'm going to give you another option. Brodie Grundy, 48% ownership. But he probably won't be in many VC considerations given his poor 72 last week. Fair enough. But prior to that game, so since his bye, he has averaged 121 points per game. Or if we look further, he's actually averaged 128 points per game at the SCG since his bye. And he's only had one bad game there, which was a matchup with Sean Darcy, which is always a really tough matchup for Tap Ruckman. This week brings Tim English to face Grundy at the SCG. Tim English is one of the worst Tap Ruckmen in the league. English only wins a hit-out in 39% of his ruck contests, which is actually one of the lowest rates in the competition for like a first-choice premium ruckman. What that means is there's plenty of hit-outs available to Grundy, and combined with the small SCG dimensions, should result in a boost in total stoppages, may also see more tackles and clearances available for the big fella. If we look at DFS, it shows Tim English as a neutral matchup for ruckman over the last 5 games, but I actually think that's quite misleading. His most recent opponents have been Sam De Koning, Mark Pitnet, who was ruck sharing, Jordan Sweet, and then the Freo duo who were also ruck sharing. So, of course, those names aren't going to put up big points, and that kind of skews the data to make it look like English is a bit more restrictive, whereas I think he just hasn't played any guns. The one time that English played a premium ruckman solo in the last 5 games was Tristan Cherry in round 16, and Cherry scored 141. So I think this is more of a case of English playing rather poor opponents than English being restrictive, and I would not be surprised at all to see Grundy match or even beat Cherry's 141. So I've been a bit cheeky there, giving you 2 pods. Darcy Cameron is my pod VC, or my pod C this week, for the tracking and for see how we're going, but I wanted to give you someone you could actually have a play with, and Brodie Grundy is that guy. Then we go to captains. Number 5 is Errol Goulden. So Errol managed 108 in a very hard matchup with Brisbane at the Gabba. That was pretty impressive. As was his 142 the week before against North. He's in pretty good form at the moment. Now he gets a matchup with the Bulldogs at the SCG. The Bulldogs have given up big disposal counts to wingers in recent weeks, highlighted by Blake Acres having 27 and Darcy Tucker having 30. I mean, if those guys can rack it up, surely Errol can too. The Bulldogs are the 5th easiest team for wingers to score against over the last 5 matchups. Goulden also has a better average at the SCG this year than he does away from home. So, it's only a small difference, but it's enough to give us some more confidence if you're an Errol owner. Errol is someone I would normally prefer to VC rather than C, but the fact that he's averaging 33 disposals per game since his bye, and now with a matchup that gives up plenty of disposals to wingers, I think you could comfortably throw the captaincy to Goulden on the Sunday if your VC fails. Now, my number 4 captain option is Jordan Clark. So West Coast are currently the 3rd easiest matchup for attacking defenders, and also the 3rd easiest matchup for general defenders. So they're giving up points to defenders. Remember last week I targeted them with Jack Sinclair, and he scored 140. Well, I put Jordan Clark in the same play style as Sinclair. I don't expect West Coast to be able to stop Clark's run and carry. Guys like Salem scoring a 98, Ed Langdon a 97, Jarman Impey a 103, Chankuth Jiath a 93, Xavier Dersma a 92. They've all well and truly outperformed their average in their matchups against West Coast, and they were all playing that winger or attacking defender type role. In fact, those players I mentioned have received, on average, a 20% boost to their current form when they matched up with the Eagles. A 20% boost to Jordan Clark's form gives us a score of 137. Do I think he'll actually score that? That might be at the higher end of my projections, but given the easy matchup, the big stage of the Derby, and Jordan's previous SuperCoach scores in 2024, maybe 137 isn't out of the question. So Jordan Clark here, I think it is a nice VC pick. But look, if you've got him and you need a captain, I'd actually be quite comfortable captaining him. I think he's quite safe here. Then my number 3 captain option is Nick Dacos. Nick Dacos has been absent from my captain video for a few weeks, and that was due to 3 tough matchups in a row. Well, here he is back again. A matchup this week with Richmond, who was a slightly positive matchup for inside midfielders. I kind of flagged it last week, and to the Tigers' credit, they've actually tightened up recently. They haven't been giving up the big scores to mids like they previously did. But this week, with no recognised ruckman, I just expect Darcy Cameron to be able to feed his midfielders all game, and I fully expect Nick to take advantage. Plus, he's so quick around the ground. Will the Tigers really be able to stop him? The last 2 weeks of midfielder scores against Richmond have not been good. Only one player scored 100 against them in the last 2 weeks, and that was Rosie's 113. So Butters, Jason Horne-Francis, Tom Green, they all failed against Richmond recently. But if we just go back a few weeks prior to that, we can see scores of 128, 125, 148, and 144 from Brayshaw, Young, Walsh, and Cripps. So I'm actually going to back Dacos here to buck the recent trend and give us a very safe captaincy score on the Sunday. This could depend on whether, Jack Graham's back in the team or you think anyone else will do a tag. I'm not really too worried. Even when Nick has got tagged, he's still going at 100. So I think he still has a safe Sunday score for us. Then my number 2 captain option here is Lachie Neale. He does actually play quite early, but I'm putting him here for a reason. So Lachie Neale let his owners down last weekend. He copped a good tag from the Adams and Parker double team. And I was watching the game. There was actually a 50-minute period there where he registered only 1 disposal in 50 minutes of footy. That's very poor. That's very unlucky-like. But somehow he still got off the chain and scored over 40 SuperCoach points in the last quarter, helping Brisbane get over the line. He has to know he's still a chance for the Brownlow, but he does need to dominate every game for the rest of the year to get there. Surely he knows that. Surely he's coming home strong. This is a perfect time to play the Suns, who are the 3rd easiest matchup for inside midfielders over the last 5 games. It's a perfect time for a Q clash with no Touk Miller, and it's a perfect time to stamp his authority again. Tom Green scored 117, Zach Butters a 120, Harry Sheasel a 141, and Nick Dacos a 116. They've all smashed the Suns in the last month. And with those 4 players averaging a 13% bump on their current form when they played the Suns, if Lachie Neale gets a 13% bump on top of his current form, this could be a juicy 143. I have hit Neale here in the captaincy category because I think he's super safe. You know, normally when I recommend VCs, it's kind of the make or break high ceiling guys. I've got Neale here as a captain, but he does play early enough that you can use him as your high ceiling VC option too. So just because I've got him here in the captains, just have a look at the schedule and who your loops are and things like that. But Lachie Neale as a VC or a C, absolutely gun this week, I think. Then my number 1 captaincy option is Caleb Serong. I discussed Caleb Serong as my best option for the Sunday captaincy last week, and he rewarded those that went with him with a big 140. Does that mean he's back in form? I actually don't really think he was ever out of form. It was more that he was tagged 3 weeks in a row. He got let off the chain last week and he got back to his 30-plus disposable ways. And now he gets a matchup with the 2nd easiest midfield over the last 5 games. So the Eagles in a derby with a medal on the line. This is a VC that I want to be a part of. Jack Steele had 118, Lachie Neale's 143, Trent Rivers 143, Dylan Moore 136, James Warple 124. They've all added 15% or more to their current form in their recent matchup with the Eagles. Granted, Caleb's current form doesn't look great, but as I said, I do think it was tag influence rather than form influenced. The Eagles have tagged Serong in previous years, but they haven't really been tagging other players in recent weeks. So Caleb has scores of 117, 147, and 117, 97, and 146 in their last 3 meetings. Serong is averaging 127 points per game at Optus Stadium this year. It's a fair bit of data I've given you just to say I think Caleb Serong in a derby against the Eagles is going to be a really nice option. Whether you VC it, whether you see it, I think it's someone I want to be a part of. So as I said, I'm really keen to... I'm going to save my VC for Caleb Serong in the derby. That's what I'm going to do. And I'll use Nick Dacos against Richmond as my fallback captain option on the Sunday. So just to recap, there's a couple of high ceiling but maybe not super safe captain options that play that you could VC in Dane Zorko, Nick Martin, Jordan Ridley. I think they're all really nice VC options. There's 3 ruckmen who have really juicy matchups that I think are going to just obliterate their opponents this week. Tristan Cherry, that's probably my favourite of the bunch. I think he's going to go bananas. Darcy Cameron as my pod captain, I think he's going to absolutely torch like the Richmond with no ruck. Brodie Grundy against Tim English at the SCG, I think that is super juicy. So any of these 3 ruckmen are going to go really well. Then I really like Errol Goulden. I really like Jordan Clark. I really like Nick Dacos as fallback potential captain options. Normally they're guys that you could like to VC, but I think their matchup's good enough that I'm happy to see them anyway. And then Lachie Neale, just an incredible option this week. Whether you VC it, whether you see it, I think he's in great form. He obviously had a down week last week, but he's got a brilliant matchup in a Q clash. So there's some options for you. Like I said, VC Serong, C Dacos for me. That's all for me this week. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, try and bump us up a few subscribers. We hit another milestone soon, so let's get there. Good luck on the weekend. Hope your team has a great win. Hope you make your league finals. Hope you nail your captaincy. And I'll be back with you to give you more advice next week.